All right, what is up, everybody? I am back here for our build review show. This is my first time doing it, so pretty excited to jump in the waters here and test this out. I know you guys have been doing it with Jordan since last week here. I believe we've done 3 build review shows. We're going to keep those going all week long here, doing those Monday through Friday. At this same time today, this 5 p.m. Eastern window. I do have a conflict tomorrow, so tomorrow's show is going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern, but we will typically have this show at 5 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is my local time here. So I'm excited to jump in. We have 5 names to get through today. Plan here as we, kind of work out the kinks and stuff is to do about 5 or 6 people a day. And so we're going to jump in. But if you guys are tuning in and you want to, you're like, hey, I'm going to play today, I want to get my lineups reviewed tomorrow, just drop a message in the office hours channel in the Discord chat. And that is the best way to let us know that you want your lineups reviewed. So let's jump in here. Going to get SaberSim pulled up. And we are going to start with Mr. Mark Adams here. Mark is on the pro subscription. So let's jump in here. And he asked for Saturday's MLB slate. So let's go up here, hit the calendar. Saturday was the 27th. Looks like Mark played the main slate. So let's jump in here, right? First thing we're going to do is start with contest selection, and then we'll jump into the actual builds here. So contest selection seems solid. Looks like he is following the profit plan. You see a good balance here, right? We see single entry in 3 max. We see, the $1 3 max, $3 3 max, $1 single entry, $1 single entry. We see some 20 maxes. And then see, I really like this, guys, because this is something we talk about from time to time. So like, Mark only had 54 entries in the mini max. Well, why is that, right? Well, what happened, I'm assuming here, right? We're kind of flying blind, is that he entered all these other contests first, and then he goes, okay, I have this much bankroll left over. What do I want to do with it, right? And how much of my split of my like single entry 3 max split versus 20 max 150 max split is left? And then he goes, okay, I'm not going to go above the bankroll number that I'm shooting for. I'm not going to go below it. I'm not going to get crazy with this. I'm just going to enter however many lineups make sense. And that ended up being 54 lineups, right? So I think that's $26. It probably ended up being here, and that probably worked out perfect for where he's at. So it's always okay to enter less than the maximum number of lineups, because in theory, what you're doing is you're entering your best lineup first, second best lineup, third best lineup. So to not enter lineups, your 55th best to your 150th best lineups is not the worst thing in the world. And it's better to, bankroll management is going to be better than maxing out a contest just to do it. So happy with what I'm seeing here. All right. So it looks like he ran 2 builds. And we're loading up the first. Okay, so this first build here is going to be probably his 20 maxes and 150 max, right? So it was like 220 maxes and then the 54 entries. So 54 plus 40, 94 lineups. So build 1 is like his like diversifier build, and then build 2 is probably going to be his single entry /3 max. So this is perfect. I think this is totally fine. It is a good thing to split these up, and really it just comes down to the sliders, right? You go and look at your sliders for small field single entry, less than 1,000 entries, correlation 7, sim diversity 6. And then you go and take a 20 max, 10 to 50K entries. You go from 7.6 sliders to 9.8. So both sliders move up 2 ticks here. I think that, is reason enough to split those up. So all that looks good. Following our advice here. Happy with that. And before we dive too deep into this build, I actually want to go and pull up one of these contests and contest flashback and just see how Mark did. So we're going to pull up the $1 20 max, as an example. I just think this is a good lineup, good contest to view here. So Mark had about 3% sim ROI. Now let's look at like what some of the top ones are if you're maxing this out. And they're about like mid to high 20s. Okay. So this is probably a solid place to start. I would say one thing that stands out to me right away, a couple things here, right? One of them is that the average salary $49,000, $49,600, $49,700, $49,000. Like almost everybody's quote unquote average salary is at least $49,000 or higher. Now that doesn't mean that you should go and set like a threshold of like, hey, my minimum salary must be $49,000. That's not what I'm getting at. But you know, I'd be interested to see like what some of the lowest salary lineups he played is. And you can do that just by clicking on the plus icon and then coming in here and changing the sorting metric to salary. So the lowest he played was 45,000, which is actually like really low on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a 9-game slate. So one thing is that he is definitely intentionally lowering his minimum salary threshold here. I'm not like opposed to doing that. I've talked about it, but this might be like a little bit too far. I don't know if, you know, we'll look in the build in a second. I don't know if you're like setting it to 0, you're setting it to like 40,000. Even if, you know, 48,000 is too, you know, you want to allow some lower salary lineups. Like normally if I do this, I'm not going lower than like 47,000. So maybe one thing here is whatever your minimum salary is, increase that, right? So a lot of lower salary lineups here is one thing standing out to me. You know, salary is typically going to be correlated to projected score. So that's why, you know, some of your lineups here are like your sim average score, which is ultimately like the projected score of your lineups across your set. Here's like 98.7. And then a lot of these other sets are higher, right? 101.9, 102.1, 102.1, 100.8, right? All these top sim ROI portfolios are all saying like, hey, the average projection in these lineups is basically all over 100. So that would be something else that I would be aware of. I think if you fix one of those things, you'll probably fix both of them here. So, you know, not to say like, you know, NJ is saying sim ROI on that lineup is 20% though. Yeah, I mean, you know, overall, right? That's a good point. You know, 20% on this lineup, 3% on the next lower salary, negative 14 on the next low salary at like 46.8, right? 47,000, negative 7. So like, let's go like to the top. Like what are the top salaries grading out as? I think that's a good point, and we should spend some time looking at that, right? 28%, negative 17, 49.7 lineup is 19%, 49.7 lineup is 11%. So I just, you know, if we look at the top, you know, let's say 5 lineups, right? 1, 1-1, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. So out of the top 5 salary lineups, 4 are positive sim ROI, 1 is negative. And then if we go to the lowest salary, 1 is positive, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2. But some of these are just like a little bit lower, right? We were seeing like 11%, 18%. Here I'm seeing like 2% sim ROI. And then I think we saw like a 3% sim ROI. So, you know, I would just, you know, you only have so many lineups to play, and I would just probably try and focus on other lineups to play. Like I'm trying to play more of those 10 to 30% sim ROI lineups. So when I come in here, I can be in that range in these, you know, high 20s sim ROI portfolio. So these are just some things catching my eye there. All right, let's jump into a build. So he did diversify. Mini Uniques looks good, up at 5. Took a stand on Blake Snell, who had high ownership. And then batting exposures are pretty spread out, like no one more than like 35%. I think that all looks good here. Mark is on the pro plan, so using Saber Score here, nothing wrong with that. And let's jump into some settings. Okay, so lowered the min salary to 45,000. You know, if you want to lower it from 48, I think that's okay. Maybe try 47 as like a suggestion and see how that goes for a week or a couple days here. No rules or groups like anything like that. So nothing weird going on there. Not really any min or max exposures for batters, for pitchers. So letting mini uniques handle all of that. Nothing on the stack types. So overall, I would say this is like a pretty hands-off approach, following bankroll guidelines, following diversification guidelines, you know, not being too like hands-on with a lot of the things here. I'm pretty sure this Washington St. Louis game had bad weather, which is why I think he exited here. So there's nothing wrong with, you know, fading a bad weather spot. But other than that, diversification looks good. I would say, you know, think about the salary, bringing that back up. And then something that I like to do personally is add an aggregate metric that shows you the average projected score of your lineups. And then you can see how this number changes as you increase or lower your min uniques and try and settle on a number where the exposure still look good, but you're not giving up too much projection. Hopefully the salary helps with that as well. But other than that, not too bad. Already, you know, small positive sim ROI. We just need to increase that number. All right. Good stuff there. We are going to hit our next person here, who is going to be Mr. Raf LP. Let me get him up on the screen. And this is going to be for Saturday's MLB slate as well. All right. 1 second. Just trying to get him up. All right. Just about ready to go. Saturday. Raf is here, said had some stands on this slate. Always fun to look at. So I'll do my best to give you the best advice I can. Okay. Looks like you played the early slate and the main. We are just going to focus on the main. NJ said, Andrew, your face is glowing today. Yeah. Got some bright lights here to you know, brighten me up. All right. So let's go to contest selection. We'll start here as always. Contest selection looks solid to me. I like it. Mix of single entry and 3 max, 20 maxes are up in there. All's good on that front. Let's pick a contest to start with. We'll start with the solo shot. So this is going to be the same one that Mark played. And let's come in here and see, you know, how another SaberSim user graded out in this same contest. So Raf, negative 8% sim ROI. Okay, good. Let's do something about that. That's why we're here. So let's sort by entries. Looking at maxers, looking at sim ROI. So see, this is an interesting situation, right? Ralph's average salary is higher at 49, almost like 49.5. But he had a lower salary. So, in this case, Ralph used more salary, but still had a lower average score. And let's see what some of his lineups looked like. So quite a few 3 stacks here. We're seeing 10 lineups. No, 11 lineups with a 5 stack. All of these 3 stack lineups might have something to do with the sim ROI, just not playing highly enough correlated lineups in MLB DFS. And this is something that I would be thinking about, something I'm going to keep in my mind as we keep doing this analysis here. Took a big stand on Arizona. So a lot of Arizona exposure. Arizona was the highest team total here. So that doesn't seem outrageous. They probably had decent ownership. We could just come in here and check. Yeah, I mean, 12%, 18%, 17%. And, like this isn't terrible, right? We talk about like 2 to 3x a player's ownership, like as a good leverage band to have. And so, 17% Gabriel Moreno in 40% of his lineups is like 2.5x. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Okay. So here he's all in on Blake Snell. Nothing wrong with that. 50% exposure. He's like, hey, I'm going to get 2x the field on him. Best pitcher on the slate by far. Highest projection. But then he basically goes all in on another pitcher who doesn't grade out well by value. Just go to value. If I sort by value, which is just like point per dollar value, Mayer is 6, 7, 8, 9th on this list. Not a high projection. Has a medium salary at like 7,500. I think this is probably where you sacrificed a lot of your projection from is by deciding to go all in. Question, what was Blake Snell's actual ownership? It was this number, this actual own, 51%, 50.9. But I think going all in on him is where you sacrifice the most projection, because if you don't do this, right, if you get to some mix of Aaron Civale, Ryan Feltner, Mitch Spence, Justin Robleski, right, all these guys in 6,200, 5,300, 6,400, 6,700. Not only did some of them grade out better projection right off the bat, like Civale 6,200, you save 1,300 salary, and you also get an extra 3 points in projection. But then now you have that extra 1,300 salary to go spend up on other batters and things like that, right? So I think that this pitcher decision is probably where some of that salary got used, that additional salary got used, but that projection stayed low. So that's what I would be thinking. I don't know why you took the stand. You could have seen something. There could have been a reason you took the stand where maybe you thought his projection was just too low. I'm not sure. But as far as, the sim ROI results, right? Because SaberSim is not using your custom projections in the sim ROIs at the moment. It's using its baseline custom projections. I would imagine this is where the difference comes from. So like sometimes it's a weird spot, right? And there's a little Ralph was like, it was great before he gave up a home run, but oh well, was a mega stand, as I said. Okay, yeah. And Jay said, yeah, but it didn't actually turn out to be a stand. I mean, if you have 50% Blake Snell and you put him in 100% of your lineups, that's 2x the field, right? So I think I would still consider that a stand on Snell. But sometimes, I run into this problem during NBA season. It's like where I'm adjusting a lot of projections and adjusting guys' minutes, and it's like the builder thinks that they're going to play X minutes and get this much projection. But like, I think that, the player is going to play 5 more minutes and get this much projection, right? And then I go into my build afterwards, or, I review my lineups the next day and I'm like, okay, I didn't grade out that well on Sim ROI. Well, probably some of the adjustments I made had to do with that. And then, so you kind of have to understand, like, okay, why am I making these adjustments? Was the reason I made them good? And because I did that, I can live with a little bit lower Sim ROI. And if you're doing that and you're seeing that, I think as long as you're still grading out positive, you don't have to be like the top, 3 Sim ROIer, but if you're making projection adjustments and you're still grading out in the top, 10 to 20 players based on however many lineups you entered, I think that's okay. So again, not sure why you did it, if you had a reason or things like that, but it is okay to have a little bit lower Sim ROI. If I was negative, I would be probably worried. If I was making projection adjustments and I was grading out, negative 8%, I might say that, okay, there's still probably some room for improvement here where I don't have to be negative 8%. Like the top, portfolios are 30%. Maybe I'm in the 15 to 20 range and I'm happier with that. So like, that's what I would be shooting for if I was making a lot of projection adjustments. All right. Good post contest review there. Let's jump into some builds. So for Mark, we did like his 20 max build. Let's do Raf's single entry and 3 max build here. We'll get this loaded up. Okay, we have a filter here. ROI greater than 0. I wouldn't use risk adjusted ROI as a filter. I would really just stick with ROI. I think ROI is a more concrete number. So when you're doing these filters, I think sticking with ROI greater than 0 is better than risk adjusted ROI greater than 0. So just small note there, nothing crazy. Diversifying here. So using a 3-min unique. I'm not sure why there's so many lineups in the trash. There's 4,300. I mean, maybe that's coming from the RAROI. What happens if I turn this off? Oh, yeah. Wow, that's a lot. So 4,300 in the trash from the RAROI. That might have to do with the decision to lock some players. Like the builder just didn't like it that much. See if I do ROI greater than 0, how many go in the trash? About the same number. About the same number here. All right. I think we talked enough about the pitchers here. A lot of min exposures to batters. Very interesting. Stack types look fine. Okay, wanting to play a lot of Seattle. So Seattle was like a big stand here. Looks like he just handled it from the all stacks. Okay, the minimum exposures make sense to me. And I kind of like it, personally here. And the reason I like it is because if we just go to Seattle, and we look at the order. So this is something that I talk about, which is why I like this. Where it's basically like, hey, I'm basically all in on Seattle in 8 out of my 9 lineups here. But if I'm going to be all in on them, I want to make sure that I'm getting exposure to all the players in the lineup. I don't just want to be all in on lineup on batters 1 through 5. Like, I do want to play batters lower in the order as well, right? And so here, he puts minimum exposure to Randy Rosarina. I thought I saw more. Maybe it was on a different team. Or maybe it was on non-Seattle players. Okay, it was on non-Seattle players. Okay. Interesting. So I don't know where or kind of why these min exposures kind of came from. If this is just based off of like feel as opposed to something else, I would be cautious. One thing I think I've seen people do is, and I think this could be a little bit of a trap. I'm not saying you did this, but I think that, people might be doing this. So I'm going to talk about it. Is, let's say you do your 20 max build first, right? You put in some minimax exposures, some things you like, and then you clone that build. You clone the build, and then you run with the same exposures for like your single entry and 3 maxes. I think that's a little, I don't know, scary, or maybe like not always the right thing to do, or like, oh, I have the same percentage of these guys across like kind of both sets of lineups. Well, like in that case, you might as well have just built them together and then just filled them all at the same time. But at the end of the day, what you need to win in the 20 max and 150 max is going to be different than what you need to win in the single entry and 3 max. So like carrying over the same lineups percentage wise is like not my favorite thing to do. I would rather just build them all together if you were going to do something like that. So that's just like a side note. Ralph said is based on numbers over the last 15 games. I don't know what to say to that. I think it's okay to take stands on players, if you want to. If that makes like DFS fun for you, if that makes it, just a more enjoyable experience. I think this is why you were seeing when we mentioned like, hey, you're not playing that many high stacked lineups. I think this is why, right? This is why we're seeing all those 3 stacks, because we have all of these minimum exposures to players across all different teams: Dodgers, Giants, Yankees, Arizona, Boston, Washington, Oakland, Arizona. So like we just named like 7 teams and only one team was used twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. 7 different teams, only 2 players from one team. So this is why you're getting probably more unstacked lineups here. I would probably reconsider this approach. And just kind of like think, maybe even like track this, thinking about like, okay, are the adjustments I'm making good, and how are they working out? And if you've been doing this, recently, if you've been doing this, go back and look at these adjustments and maybe do something where it's like, hey, out of all the minimum exposures I've set over the last 2 weeks doing this, how many people, ended up above or below their projection? And maybe you can get a sense for how random this is, how good the changes you are making, are they working, and get a sense for something like that. So I would probably do something like that, just some little research. And if you do that and you're like, you know what, like this is working, like there is something to this, then go for it. Keep doing it. I don't know, I don't know your exact calculation, how you're coming up with it, but I would be trying to find a way to objectively look at the changes I'm making and track them. It's like something I'll do, like my minute adjustments, is like track that and say, like, okay, am I right more than I'm wrong? And like, am I helping my lineups more than hurting them? All right. Good stuff there. Think we hit some solid points. So we're going to keep this show rolling here. And we are going to move on to Mr. Aquafina Tim here. All right. And we are going to move to Sunday's MLB slate. All righty. So Sunday was a 10-game main slate here. And let's get Mr. Tim up on the screen momentarily. All right. So it looks like we're all set to talk about Tim's lineups here. So start with contests. Okay, so playing all 20 and 150 max here, right? I would definitely be mixing in some single entry and 3 max here. And, just trying to have a little bit more balance in my contest selection. So as far as how you're doing in these contests, let's pull up the 4-seamer. It's $4.20 max. And this is third highest on the list. So very strong sim ROI here. Third highest on the list here, with the highest being 19%. So, Tim is right there rocking and rolling with these other guys. And I like what I'm seeing so far from him. All right. Didn't end up having a great day, but, again, like this is something that I think Jordan talks about this a lot is, go and look at like your sim median profit. This is your 50th percentile outcome. This is the outcome that happens, most often, right? Is you end up losing money on the slate. But if this was, the slate, the 1% slate where you popped off, your expected profit is a lot higher. So that's okay. You just got to keep swinging, Tim. Let's see. So I don't think there's too much else to look at here in the contest review. Let's go and look at what his build looked like. And he's just doing one build because he's doing the 20 max and 150 maxes only here. All right. Let's see. Sorting by risk adjusted ROI looks good. Diversification using min uniques looks good. I'm not sure if he raised the min salary or if this is the default. I think it's okay to use a little bit higher minimum salary on a bigger slate, right? This was 10 games as opposed to like 8 or 6 or something like that. I think that's fine. No rules. That's okay. Has a contest sim for each contest that he's playing. So he's probably, changing his contest sim setting, entering his lineups, trashing those lineups, and then moving on to the next. That's why we see 60 lineups in the trash here, because he probably did the 150 max last. So he goes, okay, I'm going to do the quarter jukebox. I'm going to do the solo shot. I'm going to do the 4-seamer, and then I'm going to do the mini max, right? The only thing I would say here, and this is really small, but it could matter, right? Is fill your contests by entry fee first. Because let's say that, you have the quarter jukebox, which is, it's just the first on this list. So that's why I'm talking about it, is let's say you do that one first. Well, maybe one of those 20 lineups was actually also the highest sim ROI lineup in the four-seamer, but you've now trashed that lineup because you used it in your quarter jukebox, and now you're going to play a different set of 20 lineups in your four-seamer when you finally get to it, if you're going down this list, which would be third, right? So I would always enter your biggest contest first on this page, right? So I would have done the four-seamer first, and then probably the mini max, which you maxed it out. So that's $75. And then the solo shot, and then the quarter jukebox last. So as far as like order of events, a little sequencing here, change it up if that's not what you're doing, but just a small but yet important note there. Okay, exposures look fine. You know, highest exposures are to pitchers. Let's just sort by exposure. Yeah, pitcher. No batter over 22% owned in these 150 lineups for the mini max. All seems fine to me. Highly correlated lineups, at least a 4-stack. Not a lot of adjustments otherwise. So I think Tim's definitely doing something good here. And I would, big things is add some single entry and 3 max. Be aware of the order that you're filling up your lineups in. And I'd say that, hopefully that helps you out. But solid portfolio, Tim. Good job. All right. Keeping it rolling. We got Mr. Fern Dog up next. And let's get Fern Dog up here. And we are going to be looking at Sunday's MLB slate. All right. All right. We are good. Okay, so let's start in the contest tab. All right, so only 20 lineups here playing the dime time. If your bankroll only allows for that, I think that's fine. If you can, start to get some $1 single entry, some $3 single entry as, your bankroll allows, quarter jukebox. Those should be the next contest on your list, right? $1 single entry, $1 3 max, get a couple of extra lineups in, the $3 single entry, and the quarter jukebox. Those should be your next contest that you're shooting to play here. Now what I would do is see how these lineups graded out. And let's jump over to users. So decent sim ROI out of the gate, right? 20.6. And let's see what we're looking at. So the highest was like 41, 35, 30. Still top 10, top 15, somewhere in that range, right? So, I think that's totally okay, right? And like, the truth is like, I don't know how long Fern Dog's been a Saber Sim sub. Maybe he's, just feeling it out. Maybe it's his first month. Maybe he's trying to get used to it. Maybe he's always hand built, right? And he's like, you know what? I want to start trying 20 max, and I want to get a feel for it. So I'm just going to play the dime times, and I'm going to get used to it, right? And he's slowly getting used to it. Well, he's still grading out positive similar Y, and it's only up from here, right? So all good so far there. Wow, this is so interesting. So you see these two guys here that grade out at the top, 41% sim ROI, 35% sim ROI, 10-point difference in sim average score. That is really crazy to me that they could have such different sim average scores yet still grade out so well in this contest. And then, Fern Dog ends up being somewhere in between the two of them here. So super interesting. All right. Highly correlated stacks, a lot of 5 stacks. Stack exposures don't look out of this world. Everything looks okay. A lot of exposure to Cole Reagan's highly projected ownership came in at 45% actual ownership. So like 2x him. Jose Ramirez 45%, and then the next 35. So one player over 35%, and then that's okay. Especially when his ownership's like 15%, right? This is on like the higher bound. So we say like 2 to 3x the player's exposure to ownership ratio, and this is like right at the 3x range. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that if that's the stand that he wanted to take. All right, let's jump into this build. So Ferndog on the standard plan using Saber Score. I think that's totally cool. High min uniques here. And then if we go down, so the last lineup in his set was 112 out of 1,500. So it must be on like an advanced plan. So been a Saber Sim sub a while, I believe, if you're on the advanced plan. So 1,500, he's still in about the top 10% of his pool, and he has a min uniques of 6, which is over half the players in his lineup. So, when you're using Saber Score, you should be a little bit more conscious of trying to stay in the higher rank lineups. So I think this is the right thing to do. He's like, you know what? I got 2 min uniques of 6. I'm still in the top 10% of my pool. I'm just going to stay here because I'm okay with where the exposures are with the risk that I'm assuming. I think that is the right approach to take. So I like that. And then, he was okay with the approach for Jose Ramirez, but then he went and put a max exposure cap on Randy Rosarina. And, this is still like a little high. It's like 5x his ownership. So this quote unquote could have been a little bit lower. Even like somebody like Victor Robles, like maybe could have been a little bit lower, but the point is that he's conscious of it and he's making a change that matches his risk tolerance. So he's like, hey, 39% is the right number for me. It was probably higher, right? It was probably 45, 50, but he's like, you know what? I want to bring this down. Let's stop at 39. Like, hey, if that's the right number for you, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And then same thing for Robles, right? Like, hey, maybe he was at 30, 40. Let's get him down to 29. So he's aware of those things. He's making a change that fits his process. I'm okay with that. And it was just those two, right? So he let min uniques do most of the work, make some small adjustments to max exposures. All good there. Nothing on the pitchers here. So overall, I think this is a solid set of lineups. I think that, hopefully as your bankroll allows, you could start adding in some more of those contests that we talked about, this $1 single entry, the $1 3 max, the quarter jukebox, the $3 single entry, and start branching out and just getting more lineups down slowly over time here. But as far as what you're doing, you're already on the right track. Your sim ROI looked good. You're diversifying. You're making some fine-tune adjustments. I didn't see anything that was that crazy. And then, just set those numbers to match your risk tolerance and you're all set. But looks good. Looks solid. All right. Now going to hit our last one of the day here. Mr. T 8607. Oops. All right. And let's get Mr. T up on the screen. We are going to be doing Sunday for him as well. So we got the Sunday main slate. And then hopefully people play today and we'll have some new fresh names for today's MLB slate. All right. Okay, good. We're good. All right, let's get this up on the screen. Lineups are loading in now. All right, so 88 lineups. 82 lineups in the $1 150 max. And then mixing in some single entry. So I think it's, it's good that he's mixing in single entry here. What I would recommend though is to play some of those other 20 maxes too, right? Start with the $1.20. If there's a 3,500 entry dime time, play that one. You want to skip the 1,200 one, it's fine. No worries there. So, mix in some more of those 20 maxes, right? I would say don't skip them. You could take this $82 and then after that, whatever's left, right? You could put it in this. You could play the 50-cent mini max, right? And get double the lineups for the same amount of money. So think about that a little bit more when deciding what contest you want to play next time. But what I would be doing is trying to get some more lineups down with that money. And then, maybe you only end up entering, when it's all said and done, you only enter 20 lineups in this contest because that's what you had left over at that point. That's okay, right? We talked about it earlier. You're entering your best 20 lineups and you're just not entering those 21st through, 82nd best lineups. That is okay. So that's all I'll say on the contest selection front. Let's pull up this $1 150 max. And let's see how he did. %7 sim ROI. I think there's probably some room for improvement. So what I would do here is if I did not max this out, I would set this entries filter greater than or equal to the number of entries I put in. Because I want to see people, around the same entry range, right? Oops, I did sim win rate. Oh, wow. This is just okay. So this is also like a good reason to spread some of that money around is because, I was like, 7%, maybe not that high. Well, he's actually the second highest sim ROI here, but that just means that this is like a low edge contest. That means that, this lineup, this contest is just, there's not that much edge in it. You're not going to be able to make a huge ROI playing it over time. So like when we saw some of those other, when we saw that dime time, right? Like it was like 40% sim ROI to first. Well, that's what I'm saying. You can get access to those contests, where the sim ROI is a little bit higher. You could still play this, just play less entries and kind of spread that around. It makes even more sense when the edge is low, when the expected long-term ROI of these contests is even lower. So that's even more reason to kind of spread this around. But what this does say is that, hey, you entered good lineups because you are the second highest sim ROI on this list when we filter for players greater than or equal to the number of entries that you entered. All right. So we're going to look at the 150 max because that's where most of his entries and entry fees are at. And just letting this load up. See these filters. Okay, field and self sim. So it looks like he's doing a field filter of greater than 10% and then a self sim filter of greater than 0. I think that's okay. I don't see anything wrong with that, being a little bit aggressive. High stakes MME ROI. Medium stakes MME ROI. Mark dropped in, said getting here late, but thanks so much for the input. Yeah, man, happy to help out. So I don't know exactly why he's doing this. My guess is that he's saying like, hey, if these lineups grade out well at the medium and high stakes, then they'll definitely grade out well at the low stakes. I think that's the thinking here. I'm not opposed to that. I think that's okay. Your lineup's obviously graded out well in the post-contest sim, so I'm not going to say don't do that. It could help with like some fragility, and if that is a filter that you'd like to use, I think that's okay. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to say don't do it. All right. And then it looks like he probably did the same thing for his other one. Is like you see these high stakes single entry, low stakes single entry, medium stakes. He's just taking the entry limit and simming across the board, which I think is fine. The stack 4 players was off. I wouldn't do this. I actually really don't like this. Where you say like, hey, I don't want to play 8 or 9 batters. And oftentimes the reason is that if you go and look, take Shohei Ohtani, for example, and you go and see his correlations, his highest correlation is actually to Austin Barnes. And then if we go and look at the Dodgers lineup here, Austin Barnes is batting 8th, right? So it's one of those situations where it's like, hey, what's happening here is Austin Barnes is getting on base somehow, and Shohei Ohtani is hitting him in. He's an extra runner on base when Shohei hits a home run, so he gets the RBI. Anytime he's on, he's getting an RBI or something like that. So I think that the correlations kind of tell you that it is okay to play 8 and 9 hitters for like the wraparound. And then also, you also get an ownership discount on these guys, right? You look at 8, 9, they're going to be the lowest owned guys on the team, 2% and 3%, right? So don't ignore them. It would be my advice. Don't ignore your 8 and 9 hitters. They're going to be the lower projected guys. So people using traditional optimizers are not going to get to as many of them. That is actually a good thing for you, right? Because in baseball, we don't actually expect Austin Barnes to get 5 points. We kind of expect him, his highest outcome is 0, 37%. But, 5 points is like happening 15% of the time. And then so, what we're hoping for is one of these, 5% outcomes where he does really well, right? And so, those upside outcomes are what you're going to need to win in DFS contests. And that's what we're trying to optimize for, right? So let him be in those lineups with Ohtani, get that salary relief, get that low ownership, and get that correlation, right? It's honestly 3 good things to have: upside, correlation, lower ownership, right? And then you get some salary savings. So don't ignore those 8, 9 hitters. All right. Oh, I'm filtered. Am I filtered? Oh yeah, I am. Still filtered for the Dodgers. I'm like, why aren't I seeing any pitchers? All right. Not seeing really any Minimax exposures for batters here. So pretty hands off there. Let Mini Neeks handle most of that. Yep. Not seeing anything. Played at least a 4 stack in all of his lineups, mostly 5 stacks though. Stack exposures look spread out. Some small changes here, some KC, some Milwaukee, some Baltimore. I think that's okay, right? I'm not opposed to making these small adjustments. How you came to those decisions, not 100% sure, but these aren't super aggressive. He's just kind of pushing the builder in the direction he wants to go. Like, you know what? I don't want to make these guys my top exposures, but I do want a little bit of them. So just helping the builder to get what you're looking for, I think is okay. But other than that, those would be my big takeaways, right? Spread around that contest selection, place more of those 20 maxes, especially with the $1 150 max being so low edge, like we saw. Making sure that you're not ignoring 8 and 9 hitters, really good. I think these filters are fine for the additional contest sims that you're running. So other than that, solid stuff. All right. We are coming up on an hour here, and those were the 5 names that I had on my list for today. If anybody watching wants me to review your builds for today's MLB slate, drop your username in the Discord office hours channel. And sometime between today and tomorrow, we'll send out a message tomorrow like, hey, for the build review show, if you want your build reviewed, drop your name here as a reminder to you guys. But this is the content that I think we're going to keep doing here. So hope people are enjoying it, and good luck to you all tonight. I will see you all tomorrow for office hours at 4 p.m. Eastern. So until then, take care. Thanks. Bye.